Welcome to understanding the unique mental health landscape of law enforcement. Though the data may be familiar, it remains deeply unsettling that law enforcement personnel face a higher probability of losing their lives to suicide than to work-related incidents. In 2019 alone, 228 officers died by suicide, compared to 132 who died in the line of duty. As a police chaplain, these numbers aren't just cold facts. They're a stark reminder of the vital importance of your role in supporting the mental health of law enforcement officers. The data reveals the troubling state of affairs for this occupation, suggesting it faces severe challenges. But behind each number is a story, a life filled with dedication, sacrifice, and often silent suffering. As you embark on your journey as a police chaplain, it's crucial to understand that you're not just dealing with numbers or abstract concepts. You're entering a world where the thin blue line often feels more like a tightrope, with officers balancing their duty to protect and serve with their mental and emotional well being as well. The role of a police chaplain is multifaceted. You're part of a counselor, part spiritual guide, and part friend. Perhaps and most importantly, you're a beacon of hope in what can often feel like a sea of despair. Simply being there can reassure law enforcement personnel that they have support in their difficulties and someone comprehends the distinctive hurdles they encounter in the profession. But before we dive into how you can make a difference, let's take a moment to understand the unique challenges that officers face. To truly grasp the depth of these issues, we will step into their world for a night. Imagine you're riding along with Officer Angela Thompson on what seems like a routine night patrol. But the night has been relatively quiet. Angela, as she's asked you to call her, seems relaxed, her experienced hands resting easily on the steering wheel. The streets are nearly empty at this hour, with only an occasional late-night reveler or shift worker crossing your path. The city takes on a different character at night, quieter, but with an undercurrent of tension. You can't help but notice how Angela's eyes are constantly scanning the surroundings, even during this moment of apparent calm. You know, Chaplain, she says, breaking the comfortable silence, nights like these can almost make you forget how crazy this job can be. You nod, encouraging her to continue. There's a wealth of experience in her voice, and you're eager to hear more. Let me be clear, Angela adds, with a hint of irony in her expression. I'm passionate about work. There's something uniquely fulfilling about genuinely impacting people's lives for the better. But some nights, she trails off, her eyes distant momentarily before refocusing on the road. You're about to ask her to elaborate when the radio suddenly comes to life, shattering the night's calm. All units have a 1054 at 1242 Maple Street, possible 187. Angela's demeanor changes instantly. Her posture straightens, her grip tightens on the wheel, and her eyes narrow with focus. The transformation is startling. She's gone from a relaxed conversation partner to an alert professional in a blink of an eye. Now that's a dead body, she explains quickly, her voice taut with tension. Possible homicide. We're closest. We're taking this call. As Angela flips on the lights and siren, you feel a surge of adrenaline. The car accelerates, and the quiet streets are suddenly alive with flashing blue lights and the sirens wail. This, you realize, is a glimpse into the world of the officers that they must navigate every day. The patrol car screeches to a halt outside a modest two-story home. Even from the street, you can see signs that something is wrong. The front door is ajar, and a flower pot is shattered on the porch, soil and broken flowers scattered across the steps. Stay in the car, Angela orders as she steps out, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. You watch as she approaches the house cautiously, her backup arriving moments later. The tension in the air is palpable as they clear the scene. Their voices sharp and professional as they call out to each other. Long minutes pass before Angela emerges from the house. Even from a distance, you can see that the grin is set upon her face and upon her jaw as it tightens around her eyes. She walks over to the car and leans in through an open window. It's bad in there, Angela mutters, her voice low and strained. Domestic violence has gone wrong. The Vic, she could not have been more than 25. You can see the weight of what she's witnessed settling on her shoulders. Her professional mask slips momentarily, and you glimpse the human behind a badge, a woman confronted with the worst of humanity, struggling to process what she's seen. You watched Angela meticulously process the scene over the next few hours. She coordinates with the forensics team, interviews the neighbors, and begins the painstaking task of piecing together what happened. Her professionalism never wavers, but you can see the toil is taking its course, the slight tremor in her hands, and she writes her report. The way her fingers linger a moment, too long, on the body bag as it's wheeled out. But one of the most challenging moments comes when the victim's family arrives. Angela takes on the grim task of informing them that their loved one's fate has caused them to be killed. You watched as she delivers the news with compassion and professionalism, leaving you in awe. The family's grief is raw and overwhelming, their cries of anguish piercing the night air. Angela stands firm, offering comfort while maintaining the emotional distance to do her job. As the investigation progresses, a suspect emerges, the victim's estranged partner. Angela's demeanor shifts again as she briefs her colleagues and organizes the search. There's a fierce determination in her eyes now, tempered with simmering anger at the senseless loss of this life. Angela's work period concludes as daybreak emerges, adorning the horizons with rosy and amber tints. The suspect is still at large, but other officers have taken over the search. She turns to you in the precinct parking lot with a weary smile. Thanks for riding along, Chaplain. It's not always like this, but sometimes it is. The exhaustion in her voice is evident, but there's something else there too, a resilience, a determination to return and do it all over again tomorrow if that's what it takes to make a difference. As you bid Angela goodbye, you can't help but wonder how many nights like this has she experienced? How does she cope with the weight of what she's seen? And most importantly, how can you as a chaplain help her and her fellow officers bear this burden? This night with Officer Thompson has given you a vivid first-hand look at law enforcement officers' challenges. But to truly understand the long-term impact of this work, we need to delve deeper into the psychological toll that it takes. What you witnessed with Angela is just one night in the life of a law enforcement officer. Now, imagine experiencing the same situations day after day, year after year. The cumulative effect on an officer's mental health can be profound and far-reaching. Law enforcement is consistently ranked as one of the most stressful occupations, and for good reason. The constant state of hypervigilance, irregular sleep patterns, and exposure to traumatic events create a perfect storm for chronic stress. Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, a behavioral scientist and former police officer, describes the phenomenon as biological roller coaster. When officers are on duty, their sympathetic nervous system, responsible for the fight or flight response, is constantly engaged. This increases heart rate and elevates the blood pressure and heightened alertness. Imagine being in a state of constant readiness, your body primed to respond in threats at any moment. This is a reality for many officers during their shifts. The adrenaline coursing through their veins, the heightened awareness of their surroundings, all part of what keeps them alive and effective on the job. The problem arises when officers can't switch off the response when off duty. The body and mind have become so accustomed to this state of high alert that relaxation becomes difficult, if not impossible. Officers might find themselves constantly scanning for threats, even in a safe environment, unable to engage in social situations or family life fully. Over time, this chronic activation of the stress response system can lead to a host of physical and mental issues, such as the following. Number one, cardiovascular problems. The constant elevation of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline can lead to a high blood pressure, increased risk of heart disease, and other cardiovascular issues. Number two, weakened immune system. Chronic stress suppresses the immune system, making officers more susceptible to illnesses and infections. Number three, sleep disorders. The irregular shift work combined with the difficulty in switching off can lead to insomnia, sleep apnea, and any of the other sleep-related problems. Number four, cognitive impairments. Prolonged exposure to stress can affect memory, decision-making abilities, and overall cognitive function. Number five, Increased risk of depression and anxiety. The constant state of stress can deplete the brain's feel-good chemicals, leading to an increased risk of mood disorders. Number 6, digestive issues. Stress can wreak havoc on the digestive system, leading to problems like irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers, and acid reflux. And lastly, number 7, muscle tension and chronic pain. The physical manifestation of constant stress often results in muscle tension, heartaches, headaches, and other forms of chronic pain. For officers like Angela, these effects can accumulate slowly over time, often going unnoticed until they've reached the point that is critical. The tough it out mentality prevalent in law enforcement culture can exacerbate these issues, as officers may be reluctant to acknowledge or seek help for stress-related symptoms. While high-profile incidents like shootings or violent crimes often come to mind when we think of police trauma, it's the accumulation of less dramatic, but still impactful events that usually take the most significant toll. Think back to Angela's night. Yes, the homicide scene was traumatic, but also consider the following: the palpable grief of the victim's family, the frustration of a suspect still at large, the administrative stress of completing thorough reports, the nagging question, could I have prevented this if I'd noticed something earlier? Now multiply this by weeks, months, and years of service. If not, hard to see how the weight of how these experiences can become overwhelming. This phenomenon, known as cumulative trauma or complex trauma, is particularly insidious because it's often overlooked. Unlike a single dramatic event that might immediately trigger a stress response, cumulative trauma builds up over time, gradually eroding an officer's resilience and mental health. Here's how cumulative trauma might manifest over an officer's career. Number 1, early career. An officer might start their career full of idealism and energy. They're prepared for the big dramatic events, but might be caught off guard by the daily grind of human suffering that they encounter. Number 2, mid-career. As the years go by, the officer has seen hundreds, if not thousands, of traumatic scenes. They've dealt with domestic violence, child abuse, fatal accidents, and the aftermath of countless crimes. Each incident leaves a small mark on their psyche. And lastly, number 3, late career. By this point, the accumulation of traumatic experiences can be overwhelming. The officers might find themselves becoming cynical, emotionally numb, or struggling with the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. The effects of cumulative trauma can be wide-ranging. Emotional numbing. Officers might become desensitized to human suffering as coping mechanism. Next, hypervigilance. The constant exposure to danger can lead to an exaggerated state of alertness, even in safe situations. Next, we have relationship difficulties. The emotional toll of the job can make it hard for officers to connect with their loved ones who haven't shared similar experiences. And then we have burnout. The combination of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion can lead to a state of complete burnout. And lastly, we have increased risk of mental health disorders. You see, cumulative trauma increases the risk of developing conditions like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So as a chaplain, understanding the concept of cumulative trauma is crucial. It helps explain why an officer might suddenly struggle with their mental health, even without a single identifiable big event. Recognizing the signs of cumulative trauma can allow you to intervene early, potentially preventing more serious mental health issues from developing. One aspect of police work that is often overlooked is the potential for moral injury. This occurs when an individual perpetrates, fails to prevent, or witnesses acts that contradicts their moral beliefs. For officers, that might manifest in various ways. 1. Split-second decisions with life or death consequences. Officers must often make rapid decisions in high-stress situations. Sometimes these decisions can harm themselves, civilians, or suspects, even when the officers act according to their training and the law. The weight of these decisions can be enormous, especially if the outcome is tragic. 2. Witnessing the aftermath of crimes against children. Few things are as psychologically damaging as encountering crimes involving children. Officers who investigate child abuse cases or respond to incidents involving harm to minors often struggle with feelings of helplessness, anger, and profound sadness. 3. Feeling constrained by legal or departmental policies. Sometimes officers might feel that legal constraints or departmental policies prevent them from doing what they believe is right. This could involve being unable to arrest a suspect they're sure is guilty due to lack of evidence or being required to enforce laws they disagree with. 4. Experiencing public criticism or hostility. In recent years, public scrutiny of law enforcement has intensified. Officers who enter into the profession with a genuine desire to serve and protect might face hostility or mistrust from the communities that they're trying to help. 5. Unable to help in situations of chronic problems. Officers often encounter individuals or situations where they can provide temporary help, but know that long-term solutions are beyond their capability. This could involve dealing with homeless individuals, people with untreated mental illness, or families trapped in cycles of poverty or violence. 6. Participating in actions that conflict with personal values. Sometimes, duty might require officers to take actions that conflict with their personal beliefs. This could involve evicting families from homes, enforcing laws they personally disagree with, or using force in situations where they would prefer to de-escalate. The impact of moral injury can be profound and long-lasting. It can shake an officer's faith in the justice system, their role as protectors, or even their own moral compass. The resulting guilt, shame, or disillusionment can be deeply traumatic. Signs of a moral injury might include guilt and shame. Officers might struggle with intense feelings of guilt over actions they've taken or failed to take. Next, loss of trust. They might lose trust in leadership, the justice system, or even their own judgment. Existential crisis. Moral injury can lead to a questioning of one's purposes, values, and beliefs. Self-punishment. Some officers might engage in self-destructive behaviors as a form of unconscious punishment. Ethical confusion. The experience of moral injury can blur the lines between right and wrong, leading to difficulty in making ethical decisions. As a chaplain, your role in addressing moral injury is crucial. You can provide a non-judgmental space for officers to express their struggles, help them reconcile their actions with their moral beliefs, and guide them towards forgiveness, both of themselves and of others. Understanding these three key aspects, chronic stress, cumulative trauma, and moral injury, provides a foundation for comprehending the mental health challenges faced by law enforcement officers. But to truly grasp how these factors play out in real life, let's explore some of the most common mental health issues that arise in police work. As we've seen, the nature of police work creates a perfect storm for mental health challenges. The combination of chronic stress, cumulative trauma, and potential for moral injury can manifest in various psychological issues. Let's explore some of the most common mental challenges that officers face. While often associated with military veterans, PTSD is also a significant concern in law enforcement. A study published in Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine found that prevalence of PTSD symptoms among police officers was nearly 5 times as high in the general population. You see, PTSD can manifest in various ways. Hypervigilance and exaggerated startle response. The constant state of alertness required on the job can become pathological, with officers unable to relax even in safe environments. They might react strongly to sudden noises or movements, always expecting danger. Intrusive memories or flashbacks. Officers might find themselves reliving traumatic events triggered by sights, sounds, or smells that remind them of the incident. For instance, an officer who witnessed a fatal car accident might experience flashbacks whenever they hear screeching tires. Emotional numbing or detachment. As a coping mechanism, some officers might shut down emotionally, finding it difficult to connect with loved ones or experience positive emotions. This emotional detachment can strain personal relationships and lead to a sense of isolation. Avoidance of situations that remind them of the trauma. Officers might go to great lengths to avoid places, people, or activities that remind them of traumatic events. This could interfere with both their personal lives and their job performance. Sleep disturbances and nightmares. Many officers with PTSD struggle with insomnia or experience vivid nightmares related to their traumatic experiences. This lack of restful sleep can exacerbate other symptoms and impact overall health. Anger and irritability. PTSD can manifest as increased aggressiveness or a short temper, which can be particularly problematic in a profession that requires calm under pressure. Difficulty concentrating. Officers might find it hard to focus on tasks, affecting their job performance and personal life. For an officer like Angela, PTSD might mean reliving that homicide scene every time she closes her eyes or becoming excessively jumpy at loud noises, even when off duty. She might start avoiding certain areas of the city that reminds her of the traumatic calls or find herself unable to connect emotionally with her family after challenging shifts. It's important to note that PTSD doesn't always develop immediately after a traumatic event. Sometimes, symptoms may not appear until months or even years later, making it crucial for chaplains or other support personnel to maintain long connections with officers. The chronic stress and emotional toll of police work can often lead to depression and anxiety disorders. These conditions can be just as debilitating as PTSD, yet they might even be more overlooked due to their less dramatic nature. Signs of depression in law enforcement officers might include persistent sadness or hopelessness. Officers might feel gloom, even when things are going well. They might say, "What's the point?" or "Nothing ever changes." Loss of interest in activities once enjoyed. An officer who used to love playing basketball with friends might suddenly lose all interest in the sport. Hobbies and social activities that once brought joy now feel like chores. Changes in sleep patterns or appetite. Depression can cause insomnia or oversleeping, as well as significant weight loss or gain due to changes in appetite. Difficulty concentrating or making decisions. Officers might struggle with paperwork they used to complete quickly or find it hard to make even a simple decision. Physical symptoms like headaches or digestive issues. Depression often manifests physically, with symptoms that don't seem to have a clear medical sense. Thoughts of death or suicide. In severe cases, officers might contemplate ending their lives. Given the high rates of suicide in law enforcement, any expression of suicidal thoughts should be taken extremely seriously. Anxiety disorders in law enforcement can take on various forms. Let's take a look at what they are. Generalized anxiety disorder, also known as GAD. Officers might experience excessive worry about various aspects of their lives, both on and off duties. This constant state of anxiety can be exhausting and interfere with the daily functioning. Panic disorder. Some officers might experience sudden, intense panic attacks characterized by heart palpitations, sweating, and a sense of impending doom. They can be particularly challenging in a profession that requires calm under pressure. Social anxiety. While it might seem counterintuitive for a profession that involves constant public interaction, some officers develop social anxiety, particularly in situations outside of their professional role. Obsessive compulsive disorder. The need for control and order in police work can sometimes evolve into obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. An officer struggling with depression or anxiety might start calling in sick more often, withdraw from social activities, or show a marked decrease in job performance. They might become irritable with colleagues or members of the public, potentially leading to complaints or disciplinary issues. It's crucial to understand that depression and anxiety often co-occur with other mental health issues like PTSD or substance abuse, creating a complex web of symptoms that can be challenging to untangle without professional help. And so we come to the end of our first session for Module 1. In our second session, we'll be looking at substance abuse and addiction, burnout and compassion fatigue, the interplay of mental health challenges, the stigma of mental health in police culture, fear of career repercussions, the tough it out mentality, the impact police culture on mental health, and much, much more. So I look forward to seeing you in our next module next month. Take care. Be blessed.